Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for joining us, and thanks, of course, to WNE for hosting this panel. My name is Michelle Brechtelsbauer. I'm the Director of Strategy at the Energy Impact Center in Washington, D.C. And I am delighted to be here hosting or moderating this panel on hydrogen, clean hydrogen, and the role of nuclear energy in our path towards deep decarbonization globally. Just a quick announcement before we begin. You'll see on the roster there are actually 5 panelists, but you'll see up here we just have 3 with us in person. Unfortunately, due to some recent travel restrictions that have been imposed, 2 of our guests will be joining us via pre-recorded video statements. But with that, I'd like to begin the panel. So, as I said, I'm thrilled to be here to speak about a very important and emerging topic, clean hydrogen and decarbonization, and of course the role that nuclear energy will play. We are joined by experts from the international, national, and regional levels to speak about their perspectives of this topic. Much like nuclear energy, hydrogen has been referred to as a panacea for decarbonizing hard-to-abate sectors of heavy industry, transportation, and buildings. But unlocking that potential will require rapid scaling of clean hydrogen production and rapid development of enabling technologies, all while considering the challenges of global energy demand, infrastructure and resource constraints, political will, and of course, financial investment. But hydrogen coupled with nuclear energy could be the most viable pathway to addressing these challenges at speed, at cost, and at scale. And everyone on this stage and those who are joining us virtually is committed to ensuring that nuclear power is part of the hydrogen solution. It's also only fitting that this week is also European Hydrogen Week, which is happening obviously simultaneously with the nuclear exposition, as we've seen momentum building for both nuclear energy and hydrogen over the past few years, with significant investment into demonstration projects and, of course, ambitious policies laid out by companies and governments in Europe and across the world. So let me introduce our panelists. First, we have Mr. Michel Berthelemy, who is from the OECD Nuclear Energy Agency, and he's a nuclear energy analyst there, part of the Division of Nuclear Technology Development and Economics. Next, we have Mr. Christophe Gudler, who's a member of the European Parliament and part of the Renew Europe group advocating for nuclear's inclusion in the European Green Taxonomy. Joining us via video is Ms. Katrina Ciclot, who's a director within the European Commission's Directorate General for Energy, whereas she was responsible for internal energy market and is the acting head of unit in charge of retail markets, consumers, and local initiatives. Mr. Philippe Storr is the director for the energy division within France's Atomic Energy Commission, CEA. And finally, also joining us via video is Mr. Shekhar Sumit, who is a program manager for the EDF Sizewell C project within the Financial and Economic Regulation team. So to kick off our discussion, I'm going to actually ask all of the panelists virtually the same question, which is to tell us their outlook for the future of unlocking hydrogen production by utilizing clean and efficient nuclear power. So I'll start with Michel, as his agency, NEA, has recently published a report ahead of COP26 on the role of nuclear energy towards net zero, including low-carbon hydrogen production. So, Michel, from the international development perspective, what is the opportunity and what needs to be done to economically scale these projects?
Thank you, Michelle, and thank you for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be with you today at WNE. As you said, NEA has recently been publishing some studies on the role of nuclear towards net zero. And maybe just to set the frame, what we were trying to do in this study was to start to look and quantify what are the potential of nuclear toward net zero, looking not only at electricity application, which is what nuclear does today, and it does it very well, but also starting to look at non-electric applications, such as nuclear heat for industry, for district heating, and nuclear hydrogen. And when we start to crunch a number, when we start to really take a broad view of the energy system, we see that there is tremendous potential for nuclear to contribute to the hydrogen economy, and I will come back to that in a moment. And through that, to contribute to the objective of the Paris Agreement by really avoiding significant amount of CO2. Now, I think it's useful, maybe at the start of this panel, to talk a little bit about what are the expectations in terms of deployment of hydrogen and the need for hydrogen for net zero. And to do that, to maybe put different time horizons. I think first we have a horizon at 2030 at which we see a significant need to decarbonize existing hydrogen production, which is primarily with industry today, and some start of rollout of a number of applications related, particular to transport, mostly light transport. And then further ahead, not in 2050, but between 2030 and 2050, we see a second stage of development for the hydrogen economy, where you'll be talking about, in particular, producing at very large scale hydrogen that can meet the need of some other application in transport sector, in particular to produce synthetic fuel for transport, for aviation in particular. And that shows you that there is a need to deploy solutions that are scalable to meet the need of this hydrogen economy. And so then, having set the frame of what's happening with hydrogen, let's look at the supply side and let's look at what are the options. And today, the discourse is on decarbonizing hydrogen is primarily focused on renewables, and we see some important momentum, and this is a very positive development. In particular, in Europe, we see momentum for using variable renewables, which are becoming increasingly affordable, and we need to welcome that. But we also need to keep in mind this time horizon and the fact that at some point, the quantity of hydrogen that are going to be required to decarbonizing all these applications that I mentioned are going to be tremendous, and renewable on their own won't do it. And so you need to think about what source of energy can help us produce a very large scale hydrogen, and then, looking back at our low carbon options, where we see that with nuclear, you have power plants, technologies that can operate at very high load factors, which help the economy because, you're going to have capex on the production side and on the electrolyzer side, so you want to make sure your electrolyzers work at a high level of for as many hours of the year as possible. We know that nuclear is affordable, in particular existing nuclear, and the new nuclear, if you do it right, and I invite you to look at a study at NEA on this field. And last but not least, we see that it's very much scalable, and it can really unlock a gigawatt scale of production of hydrogen. So in that sense, for us, there is a tremendous opportunity starting with this decade, in this decade, to help decarbonize existing production of hydrogen, demand for hydrogen, and then in the 2030 onward, for a lot of new applications that are crucial for decarbonizing hard to abate sectors, and here stressing again the role of aviation. Maybe just last points I want to make now before leaving the stage for the other panelists. On the existing markets, there was a recent study by a team from MIT and Stanford that looked at W Canyon in the US, and I invite all of you to have a look at this study, which is available on the internet. They had a very detailed analysis, and what is unique about this detailed analysis, this is not a theoretical exercise. This is a plant in operation today. And what they found is that if you repurpose part of Diablo Canyon in California to produce hydrogen at scale, this could be done for half the cost of the existing alternative, primarily variable renewable. So just to show you that these are very concrete solution and competitive solution, and that nuclear has really an important role to contribute in this field.
Thank you, Michelle. I think your point that we have a lot of opportunity for development of this technology to decarbonize existing systems, as well as to really pave the way for new clean forms of hydrogen production in this decade. That's a critical point. So now I'd actually like to turn to kind of the whole European perspective. And we'll bring in Mr. Gutler, and we'll also hear from Mrs. Ciclot to discuss how Europe is preparing the conditions to encourage development of clean hydrogen projects in the next decade. So Christophe, can you tell us about your work to include nuclear in the debate and how that affects the expanded use of hydrogen in Europe?
Thank you very much, Michelle, and thank you to the GIFIN for the organization of this panel discussion and for this impressive international event. When I want to talk about nuclear, about clean hydrogen in the European Parliament and globally in the European institution, the first thing I'm talking about is about the Green Deal. The Green Deal is the main goal of the European institution till 2027. It means climate neutrality till 2050 and 55% of reduction till 2030. And I always ask the same question, especially to the opponent of the nuclear power. Do you want to make the Green Deal a success? If you want it, you need nuclear power. As we used to say, we need it as a part of the solution. It's not the only solution. But in the mix, in the energetical mix, we need to have a part of nuclear power. The Commission explained that we need 12% of nuclear into the mix if we want to make a success for the Green Deal. And people who are against nuclear power are against the goal of the Green Deal on the climate change. And it is, I think, in the new generation and also in the Greens group, you have some maybe younger generation who realize that it is not a problem, nuclear. We need it. And it's the old generation who try to fight again. For meeting the goal, we explained that we need on energy most of electrification as far as possible. And when electrification is not possible, we use hydrogen, for example, for heavy transport and for industry, for sector hard to abate with electricity, and maybe hydrogen, but also ammoniac for boats, maybe. But first electrification, and after hydrogen, or even ammoniac. All of this, nuclear can be involved in all the parts. And that's why I'm fighting with my colleagues from the European Parliament to find the best way to include, of course, nuclear into the taxonomy. You know all, I think, in this room what taxonomy is. But we have to find a lot, because some countries are clearly against, but most of the countries are in favor. And we have to convince a lot of colleagues of the European Parliament to believe in the nuclear energy. There is no reason to exclude the nuclear energy of the taxonomy, because the taxonomy is a list of energy who are zero carbon, who are decarbonizing Europe. Then if you don't put it, it will not be logical. It will be dogmatism. And that's the reason why we create in the European Parliament an intergroup of colleagues from different countries, from different political groups. The main political groups are in the intergroup. I have the happiness to share We have colleagues from him from SND, EPP, ECR, and the Renew group, which is my group. Means right, left, middle. Well, we are very involved in the success of the nuclear topic. And because you don't have to forget that the European Parliament, it's not, there is no majority. And the majority is transversal, always. In my group, I have people who are very fighting against nuclear. In the other group, it's the same. But in all the groups, we have people who believe in it. And the most important for us is to be motivated and to be ready to have a good delegated act from the Commission with taxonomy. For me, a good delegated act with Commission, it's to recognize nuclear power as sustainable energy, not transitional energy. It's sustainable because there is no emission, carbon emission. Then we will be very careful about it, and maybe at the middle of December we will have the new delegated act about it, and it's very important for private money to invest in the nuclear sector. Maybe we are working on different topics. Of course, if you want to promote nuclear, we have to talk about waste, because the colleagues who are not convinced are talking about waste. That's the reason why we have to call it, to talk about it. We have to talk about research, innovation, in order to show that a lot of people are involved in finding good solutions for all the nuclear value chain. Maybe we have the possibility to have partnership with a lot of European countries, especially for SMRs, the smallest part of the value chain, because SMRs are very interesting for some Eastern country, especially, and we try to make, with the help of the Commission, a partnership between the countries that want to be involved in this, maybe with a supply chain in their country, but I think it will be a very good work that we can make together. For hydrogen, of course, it's the second part of your question. It's very complex to work on hydrogen in the European Parliament, because we have a fight, of course, between renewable hydrogen and decarbonized hydrogen, which is hydrogen produced with nuclear power especially. We have two packages in the European Parliament. We have the Fit for 55 package. It's around 15 different texts in order to be ready till 2030. And renewable hydrogen is in this package. It's RED 2. We are making the revision of RED 2. It's Renewable Energy Directive. I am a shadow rapporteur for my group on this text. But in this text, we are talking only about renewable hydrogen. Not a word about decarbonized hydrogen, because the topic is renewable energy. Then we have this text in this package, and after that, in January, maybe at the end of December, but in January, we will have the second package, which will be the gas package. And in this part, you will have the decarbonized hydrogen. But what happens if in the Renewable Energy Directive, you put a goal, maybe 100% of renewable hydrogen in the industry, in the production of electricity? There is no place at the end of the day for decarbonized hydrogen. That's the reason why we try to find a balanced text. Of course, we need renewable, but of course, we need also decarbonized hydrogen, because we need massive production of hydrogen. And if it's only renewable, it will be absolutely impossible to have enough hydrogen. And to finish, maybe in order not to be too long, the Commission explained that in 2050, till 2050, there will be 500 billion euro of investment in the hydrogen file, and also 1 million new jobs in this activity. And of course, it's very close with the nuclear sector. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I mean, I think that the topic of scale, if you all didn't hear it, he hit the nail perfectly on the head around why, decarbonized hydrogen or nuclear hydrogen is just going to be so critical for achieving the milestones that Europe has ahead of it and the rest of the world. So now we're actually going to hear from Katerina, who has joined us via a video statement. And just to let you all know, my question that she is responding to was from the perspective of the European Commission, what is being done by the EU to encourage investment here, such as through the EU hydrogen strategy set up by the Next Generation Europe plan. So now I'll watch a video.
Many thanks for the question. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. The EU has set a very ambitious objective to scale up hydrogen production and consumption. The priority, as set up in the EU hydrogen strategy adopted in July 2020, is to develop renewable hydrogen, produced using mainly wind and solar energy. Renewable hydrogen is the most compatible option with the EU's climate neutrality and zero pollution goal in the long term, the most coherent with an integrated energy system, and the one that has the potential to be cost competitive with fossil hydrogen already by 2030. This is why the hydrogen strategy puts forward a strategic objective to install at least 40 gigawatts of renewable hydrogen electrolyzers by 2030. With a view to produce up to 10 million tons of renewable hydrogen in the EU. In the short and medium terms, however, other forms of low-carbon hydrogen, which could include hydrogen produced with low-carbon nuclear electricity, are needed, primarily to rapidly reduce emissions from existing hydrogen production and to support the parallel and future uptake of renewable hydrogen. This is already clear. It indicates for investors that we have set ambitious targets for a quick scale-up of hydrogen in the EU. Investors need certainty, and we are working to create the right policy and regulatory environment for these investments to take place. Over the last year, Europe has transformed its vision laid out in the hydrogen strategy and energy system integration strategy, and has developed these into concrete set of policy proposals that we are now discussing with the Member States and the European Parliament. And that will be complemented by the end of the year with the hydrogen and gas markets decarbonization package. These policy proposals cover the full hydrogen ecosystem, from more renewables to research and innovation to hydrogen pipelines. The Fit for 55 package, as it stands, provides a comprehensive framework for which we believe will support investments in the production of both renewable and low carbon hydrogen. The Energy Taxation Directive provides an overarching incentive for end consumers to choose for clean energy carriers, where we have proposed to put the lowest tax rate on both renewable and low carbon hydrogen and hydrogen derived fuels. To support production, the extension of the EU emissions trading scheme is creating a level playing field for the production of renewable and low carbon hydrogen compared to fossil-based production. Furthermore, the Fuel EU Maritime and the Refuel EU Aviation proposals create additional impetus for the uptake of renewable and low carbon hydrogen fuels in these two hard to decarbonize sectors. Another important element is the certification framework. Certification of renewable hydrogen is already proposed in the Renewables Directive revision, whilst low carbon hydrogen certification will be put forward in this package that I mentioned on hydrogen and gas markets decarbonization. We are also putting in place a comprehensive framework to support dedicated hydrogen infrastructure, allowing producers and consumers to connect. In this context, the proposal on Trans-European Networks for Energy has put forward a dedicated category for hydrogen infrastructure, as well as proposals for more integrated energy planning, whilst the Alternative Fuels Infrastructure Regulation proposal introduces a European-wide network of hydrogen refueling stations to support the decarbonization of heavy-duty and long-distance road transport. Finally, in the upcoming hydrogen and gas markets decarbonization package, we will put forward a legislative proposal setting the right regulatory framework to enable the emergence of a fully fledged hydrogen market with a dedicated infrastructure. This proposal will also facilitate the access of renewable and low-carbon gases into the existing gas network. This should help hydrogen become a key component of the energy sector. To scale up demand and production of renewable hydrogen, we have put in place targets for 2030 in industry and transport. We are also finalizing our proposals for the so-called Delegated Act on renewable fuels of non-biological origin, or the Delegated Act on Additionality, as it is often referred to, which will further develop the conditions for renewable hydrogen to be accounted for, especially when it is produced using renewable electricity from the grid. We believe that this comprehensive regulatory framework will provide the necessary clarity to investors to finance the uptake of hydrogen, and it will provide certainty to both producers and consumers. However, clear rules will not be sufficient alone. We also need appropriate funding to make sure that the technical potential to produce both renewable and low-carbon hydrogen within the EU is fully exploited, for instance, by strengthening research and innovation in this area. This is why we have proposed a clear, clean hydrogen partnership with 1 billion euros of funding. Furthermore, we have just announced the construction of 300 megawatt electrolyzers and announced 4 large-scale hydrogen demonstrators supported by the Innovation Fund. It is clear that our member states are also very much keen to develop the hydrogen economy, and many member states have put in place plans to support the production of renewable or low-carbon hydrogen through the Recovery and Resilience Fund. It is important to recognize that the majority of financing needed to produce renewable hydrogen is in the production of additional renewable power generation. Again, member states are working on this in order to build the necessary capacity. Full-scale industrial deployment of clean hydrogen requires coordination along the whole value chain, more renewable power generation, bigger electrolyzers, more transport options, innovation in end consumers, private and public investments, and public acceptance. We need to keep working on these elements to progress quickly towards our 2030 targets. And here I can repeat that both renewable and low-carbon hydrogen will play an important role in achieving these objectives. Thank you.
All right, great. So I think in both of those responses, we had quite a lot of shout outs to the innovators. So I'd like to bring in Philip Stohr to hear, from the researcher, the R&D perspective, how this community is approaching this transition to clean hydrogen and the role that nuclear power will play. So Philip, could you give us a quick glance into the French hydrogen strategy and how France is supporting innovation?
Yes, thank you, Michel, for your question. Before answering, if you would allow me just a few comments or remarks about what has been told so far.
Absolutely.
I think it's clear that hydrogen is high on our agenda. It has been stated by Michel, it has been repeated by European Commission, it has been repeated also by my colleagues from the European Parliament. Yet, if we look about the quantity of hydrogen that we have to produce in order to decarbonize industry, heavy transportation, and so on, if we look that not in all European countries there is enough space, room, or whatever to rely fully on renewable energy, if we are not putting nuclear energy on the agenda to produce CO2-free hydrogen, there is a risk, definitely, for the security of supply. There is a risk that we will rely on importation and that we will create new geopolitical agenda. So that's something that we have to keep in mind, that we are not entering into a hydrogen strategy that would jeopardize some of the fundamentals of European Union. So that was just kind of remark about what I've heard so far. So I think that the topic of security of supply, sovereignty and industrial sovereignty should be on the agenda. And here I think that nuclear energy, to come back to your question, has a great role, because it can produce CO2-free hydrogen, it can help with the sovereignty issue, and it can help also by putting in place industrial value chain in Europe and not just rely on the world and what can be imported into Europe. So back to your question, what is the French strategy? The French strategy relies on 3 pillars. And the first pillar is really to decarbonize the industry. It has already been stated by Michel. This will be one of the first targets. Some industrial area will be hard to decarbonize, only with power, and we definitely will need hydrogen. So basically, we have to replace hydrogen that is currently produced by fossil fuel, by carbon-free hydrogen. This is something that is included in the French multi-annual energy plan. And for doing that, the plan is to install 6.5 gigawatt electrolyzer. And in order to feed those electrolyzers with power, obviously we want to rely on nuclear. The second point is to develop the use of hydrogen for heavy mobility. Michel was commenting about the different time horizon, and obviously hydrogen is very well suited and timely. It can be one of the first uses in the transportation for the long range and heavy duty. And how do we plan to do that, and how is it integrated in the French strategy? The idea is to create local hubs, hub where basically you will pool some demand from the transportation sector and from the industry. And here I come to the idea of energy hubs where a small modular reactor coupled with electrolyzer might be a very suitable option to create local energy that can feed buses and can feed industrial platform in the territories. So a new way of thinking how nuclear could be integrated in the territories. So that's something also that we are thinking about. And the last pillar of the French strategy is innovation. It has been already stated, we need R&D, we need innovation in that field, not only for the production, but as well for the transportation, for the storage also of hydrogen. And here we are very pleased to run with colleagues from another organism, a national program about our R&D for hydrogen. So all in all, that's 7 billions have been announced, and lately the French president has announced about 2 billions more, so that's all in all 9 billion euros that France is investing in building hydrogen economy, if I would say, like that. So there is strong momentum in France. There is also a strong momentum in Europe, and we are fully aligned with what has been stated. My last comment, and sorry to repeat what you have indicated already, is that we should set a target for Europe for all low-carbon generation, and not only for renewable. So we should talk about not green hydrogen, but carbon-free or free carbon hydrogen, and get off the use of fossil fuel. And here, obviously, nuclear is on the agenda.
Thank you, Philip. So we're now going to turn to Shikhar Sumit, who sent in another video to tell us about EDF's agenda for developing a demonstration project at the Sizewell C plant, proposed facility that's 3.2 gigawatts of clean energy. And so this will be a really great perspective into how this might actually pan out. So let's turn to that.
Hi. My name is Shekhar Sumit, and I'm very sorry I am unable to attend this event in person today, owing to some recently imposed travel restrictions. I work at Sizewell C, which is a proposed 3.2 gigawatts new nuclear power project in Suffolk, United Kingdom, which, when ready, will be able to power 6 million homes across the UK with baseload low-carbon electricity. However, we are also exploring opportunities to do with Sizewell C, where we will not only be able to provide baseload low-carbon electricity to the grid, but can also play a role across a whole range of energy vectors. The key underlying philosophy behind that is that nuclear energy at a very fundamental level is a source of thermal energy. And indeed, it has been recognized as being the lowest cost producer of low carbon heat. So instead of turning all of that heat into electricity, conceivably, some of that heat can then be used for other purposes, such as producing hydrogen or direct air capture as well, which in a nutshell is our concept of an energy hub linked to Sizewell C. On hydrogen production specifically, Sizewell C can make the production process much more efficient by electrolyzing steam instead of heat. This is not a technology of the future. As a matter of fact, this is technology available today. And a 720 kilowatt solid oxide electrolyzer cell system was installed recently in Germany. And further, in the shorter term, we are also looking to use hydrogen to decarbonize our construction processes. We had recently commissioned an independent study which found our carbon footprint will be as low as 5.5 grams of carbon dioxide equivalent per kilowatt hour. Now, using hydrogen instead of diesel to fuel and power our buses and construction equipment would further reduce our carbon footprint. It would also offer a very significant use case for hydrogen consumption and will enable Sizewell C to be an exemplar of low carbon construction. Further, there are also synergies with other ideas we're looking at. For instance, I had mentioned direct air capture earlier. Heat is a key component of this direct air capture technology, which can then extract carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. And then this carbon dioxide can potentially be combined with hydrogen to form synthetic fuels. In summary, nuclear projects such as Sizewell C can play a key role in our path to net zero by not just providing low carbon electricity, but also, for instance, by providing and producing low carbon hydrogen at scale. Now, there are, of course, challenges, in particular to do with the need to ensure that there is adequate policy support for nuclear hydrogen and that there is a level playing field across various low carbon technologies that can produce hydrogen. However, with the support and engagement with various stakeholder groups and an event such as this, which is such a lovely opportunity to socialize such ideas, I'm fairly confident nuclear and nuclear hydrogen can and will play a role in our journey to net zero. Thank you so much for your time, and I hope you have a lovely rest of the day. Thanks.
All right, great. And of course, EDF has a booth right outside, so I'm sure you can go and socialize with them in Shikhar's absence.
CA has a booth too.
As well. So now we're actually going to go round robin and just have some kind of topical questions. And feel free, those on the stage, to jump in if you'd like as well to the question that I asked one of your colleagues. But Michelle, we'll start with you on technology coupling, because as we know, there's more than one way to produce hydrogen. And one possibility often promoted as being more economic is to use existing methods and infrastructure as opposed to changing the energy source to renewables or to nuclear energy. So in your opinion, I'd like to ask, is it worth adding the other cost factor to clean up a dirty form of hydrogen, or should we put that money towards nuclear to hydrogen projects recognizing that there is a time readiness and scalability factor in both scenarios?
We need both. That's the answer. But allow me to expand just a little bit. First, coming from the OECD, we are strongly committed to market-based principles, and which means ensuring there's a level playing field on the market. And this is why I want very much to echo what has been said by the other panelists. That is to say, you need to set rules, regulations that don't pick the technology, but focus on the desired outcome. And I think here is the desired outcome we're all looking for is to have low carbon hydrogen. And so that means that in very practical terms, we need now to design regulations to allow the development of low carbon hydrogen. And that means a series of economic regulations that are required to do that. We need to do that both on the supply and the demand side, because we need to have typically industries that currently don't use hydrogen to switch to hydrogen to decarbonize the processes. And there is a bit of complexity factor around that we need to acknowledge. And then there is what is very classical, which is a valley of death, because we know that as the hydrogen economy is going to take off, there's going to be important economies of scale, there's going to be series effect, and we need to also have regulations that are fit to bridge that valley of death. And that means that when it comes to nuclear hydrogen, they're going to have to be at some point some demonstration project, and we need to also put, under a broad market-based framework, put some regulation that support specifically demonstration project. And I think, typically that speaks to the previous panelist on Saswell C. And I will stop now.
Great. Well, it's a great segue to our next question for Christophe around regulation. And obviously there's a clear policy and regulatory role to pave the way for an accelerated transition towards clean hydrogen. So what measures are the European Parliament currently considering or should be considering in that regard?
Thank you very much. It's a very important question. And of course, we need different tools in order to make it a success. And we are thinking on it with our intergroup. As I said before, I just want to thank the colleagues of the other countries who are in this room today, who are coming from my intergroup, especially coming from Bulgaria, coming from Czech Republic, coming from Sweden, and coming from France. It's very important for us to have them with us in this round table. First tool, it's the European market for hydrogen. We need to create a real European market for hydrogen because today it's absolutely impossible. Today in Europe we use 11 million tons of grey hydrogen. And the first topic is to change grey hydrogen coming from natural gas to green hydrogen or decarbonized hydrogen maybe. This hydrogen is the cheapest we can have. In order to give an idea, it's around 1.5 euro a kilo of hydrogen. If you green hydrogen, it may be around 6 euro a kilo, but it depends on the grids. When you have in some countries some innovation for buses with hydrogen, trucks, you have a wind turbine and you produce hydrogen, sometimes it's 15 euro a kilo. That's impossible. We can't find against natural gas for producing hydrogen if we have not the good tools, the good price for this decarbonized and renewable hydrogen. That's the reason why we will try to have a real market at the beginning of the next year. And we hope that the prices will be the lowest, not that the gray hydrogen prices will increase, because we think that the best is to have a price around 3 or maybe 4 euros a kilo. It will be the best for all the stakeholders. And the second tool is to help innovation. We have a lot of innovation, especially in industry. For example, to produce green cement, to produce green steel. It needs a lot of money, and if you have not support from states or from the European Union, it will be impossible to realize it. The topic is, the goal is not to stop producing steel in 2050. The goal is to produce differently steel in Europe in 2050. And for innovation, we have a special fund. The previous speaker talked about it. Ursula von der Leyen explained it last week. Is this clean hydrogen coalition with 1 billion euro for helping all the people, the companies, the countries, the communities that want to innovate in hydrogen. They will have a lot of European money, and I think without money we will be unable to do anything. And to conclude, and not to be too long, we have of course the IPCEI on clean hydrogen, which is a very important tool. We just need 2 or 3 countries, maybe 4, working together on producing hydrogen. It's a very good alliance, a very good IPCEI. And to finish, for me, this market, hydrogen market, need to be, of course, decarbonized. Of course, local production with smart grids, also with maybe a most important network, but inside Europe, because for me, it's important for the strategic autonomy of Europe. Now, in Europe, we depend at 62% of energy coming from other countries, in other parts of the world. And if we say it's finished with fossil energy, it's not to be dependent on other energy coming from other parts of the world. And if we, one of the tools we try to find is to explain to all the member states that we need to produce locally hydrogen, nuclear, and in order to have our own destiny in our own hands. Thank you.
Thank you. And next over to you, Philip, kind of talking about how we're going to demonstrate doing exactly that. We've seen several countries actually implementing demonstration projects just in the past few years. Most of them, though, using renewable energy, like those in Chile, in the UK, also in France. But we have seen some that are planning to utilize nuclear for that demonstration project. Of course, as Michel referenced previously, the Palo Verde demonstration project from the US Department of Energy, and as Shakar referenced previously, the Sizewell C project in the United Kingdom. So to Philip, what is your role as a major stakeholder of R&D in those demonstration projects, and how can these types of projects demonstrate the viability of nuclear to hydrogen solutions?
So as you commented, we are a research organization. So we are RTO, so that's a research technology organization. So our mission, or if I would tell it in France, our raison d'être, is definitely to invent, to develop technologies and to transfer them to industrial partners. And that's how we could speed up finally, because what we need in the end is technologies that would be able to produce this CO2-free hydrogen. We have been working on electrolyzer technologies for more than 50 years now. We call it high temperature electrolyzer. That is in comparison to other existing technologies available on the market, like alkaline or proton exchange membrane technology, is more efficient, about 15% point more efficient. So higher efficiency means less power to produce. So that's nice for the planet, but it's also nice for the competitivity. And Roa mentioned that the price, we have to beat, or we have to be competitive with the price of hydrogen for from fossil fuel. So that's what we're working on, not only developing technology, but make it industrial. And this is a journey that we have started in a startup called Genvia, now where we have the plan to develop a pilot factory and maybe later a giga factory to produce massively those electrolyzers. And Grégoire mentioned the IPCI, so we have applied for the IPCI, and we do hope to have nice news very, very soon. I'm quite comfortable, I'm quite optimistic because it's a very nice project. So that's the first point. Work on the technology, industrialize it, make it available, and now and as soon as possible, and competitiveness. The second point is once you have electrolyzer, I mentioned my coupling with the SMR to develop local energy hubs. So that's something that we are definitely working at, how to use high temperature electrolyzer with nuclear, how to use, and it has been stated by one panelist from Sizewell, how to utilize the heat from the nuclear power plant, how to use the power and make a very efficient energy system for local generation. And I can only repeat what has been already told. We have to build a capability of hydrogen production in Europe, not to rely on, let's say, other countries. It's about sovereignty again, and it's about security of supply. So our role as a RTO is definitely working on the technology, industrialize it, and make nice partnership with industrial players so that it can be timely on the market when needed.
Great, thank you. And now, I think we actually have been afforded just a couple extra minutes, so I'm going to ask our panelists only on the stage to very quickly go back around in reverse order and give us kind of a couple sentences on what they see are the biggest challenges over the next decade, and of course, what's the biggest opportunity for nuclear to hydrogen. Philip?
So I start then. I mean, in very few words. First is hydrogen is needed to achieve the net zero agenda. So my first comment would be, let's acknowledge that nuclear is part of the solution and put it in the taxonomy and not only as a transition energy. It has been already stated, but I can repeat it firmly. And a second point is this requires a lot of research, innovation, and I think it's time to speed up, to go for a demonstration plant, and this requires obviously financing, and this requires adequate market scheme. It has been already stated. But before we go to the full deployment in the market, we need prototype, we need demonstration, and that's a big push on R&D and demonstration project.
All right, Christophe?
Very shortly, to conclude, for me the major challenge would be the time, because we need to act now, because the time is running for the planet, and that's very important to convince the youngest generation. And we need a lot of time for the process, and it's absolutely incredible. For example, Fit for 55 package, gas package. We need to close our work very, very quickly. For me, in June 2022, it has to be finished, because the first goal is in 2030. You imagine only 8 years, maybe 7 years for the industry, for the energy stakeholders to find solutions. It's very short. Then, for this challenge, we need to have a maîtrise of the time, I can say. And on the major opportunities, just some words maybe to give to you. It's decarbonization, innovation, strategic autonomy, and job creation. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Michel.
Building on what has already been said, I fully agree with Christophe on time, but I would just add to that the fact that time is crucial. You need to accelerate, and my recommendation is to accelerate and do it right. The nuclear sector needs to speak with the hydrogen demand to really understand what will be the requirement, And I think this will be a key tool to accelerate successfully. On the opportunity, I want to echo what Philip has said earlier, which is that hydrogen is an opportunity, is an economic opportunity for nuclear, but it's also an opportunity for the nuclear sector to reinvent in some way its relationship integration to society, because you'll be talking about meeting a range of new needs and often meeting them in a much more integrated way with the local community, with the local industry. And so this is also an important point which I think the nuclear sector needs to consider and to embrace when it looks forward for the hydrogen economy.
Great. Thank you all very much. That concludes our panel. I certainly learned a lot, and I really enjoyed all of the perspectives that you provided about how we can scale hydrogen to nuclear solutions, or nuclear to hydrogen solutions, apologies. Thank you all so much for attending, both in person and online.